Just the other day, Activision reported some rather tasty revenues that were higher than expected for them, but apparently this wasn't enough to stop the layoffs hitting studios such as Infinity Ward. Now, of course, unfortunately, layoffs are common in the industry and, of course, many industries, but it still is a tad unusual for a company who just previously were talking about, again, their higher than expected revenues to then be saying a few days later that they're laying off several staff members. According to a report from Kotaku, Activision have laid off roughly 5% of their workforce, and this includes people over at Infinity Ward, Beenox, and other internal studios. Now, I'm sure the one that you're all concerned about the most is, of course, Infinity Ward, given that they are within the rotation for the Call of Duty franchise. And per Kotaku's report, which of course will be linked in the description below, Infinity Ward lost about 20 employees. Now, it is important to remember that, Infinite Warfare didn't actually meet their expectations in terms of sales, especially when compared to Black Ops 3. However, the franchise as a whole still did well for the company in the last quarter. Conversely, however, it seems that despite the fact that the series still did well, that drop versus the previous iteration was still enough for Activision to reassure fans that the franchise will be going back to its roots after the space setting didn't resonate with fans as they expected. It's hard to say if layoffs hitting Infinity Ward is a direct result, or if they decided to make cuts there because Call of Duty didn't do well, and do they need to make cuts somewhere, or a bit of both. It's tough to say, but it still is unusual nonetheless, but perhaps it does speak to the fact that they weren't pleased with the results of Call of Duty. Despite it doing well overall, it still suffered a hefty drop again versus Black Ops 3. However, as much as Infinity Ward and the employees who were unfortunate enough to lose their jobs were undoubtedly feeling the pinch from this, it was actually Beenox who were hit the hardest, as their QA division were actually shuttered entirely. And of course, other internal studios as well had developers and other staff members cut from the workforce. So it seems that Activision are trimming the fat, as it were, even though they still had a pretty damn good year, mostly thanks to Blizzard's success. But perhaps they're just seeing some declines in areas that we're not. Of course, they have access to all sorts of facts and figures that we're not privy to, and they decided that these areas could do with some trimming down. Now, my question really is what effect, if any, is this going to have on Call of Duty as a franchise? They've already said, of course, that they're taking the series back to its roots. Does that mean perhaps they're going to not give the developer in rotation as much freedom in the past? They're going to be looking over their shoulder? Are we going to go back to the more sort of regulated, very predictable Call of Duty that we saw for a couple of years before it was very much revitalized by the more recent iterations? I hope not, but I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were. Still, my sympathies go to everyone who lost their jobs. We've all been there at some point in our lives, and it is not a fun time. Hopefully they can land on their feet and find positions within other companies, or maybe even within other areas of Activision. It's definitely possible. So, with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.